Welcome into the Michigan Football Report, folks. It's signing day. It's a national holiday for some of you. For some people in other businesses, it's a different day. What do we say? It's impeachment day over there, something like that. But it's the chatter around the office say we're going to go through the entire 2020 Michigan football recruiting class. We're going to take a look at where Michigan stands in the national rankings and tell you where they stand in the Big Ten. Let's take a look at the class in general. Overall, 24 players committed. Now, not all of them have signed yet, but overwhelming majority, we have 20 or so have signed at this point at 11 a.m. here on a Wednesday. No 5 stars in this class, but a boatload of 4 stars and quite a few 11 3-stars in this class. So Michigan missed out on the high-end talent. As you'll see later on in the show, certainly don't have the high-end talent compared to Ohio State. So that's going to be a problem when it comes to closing that perceived talent gap between the Wolverines and the Buckeyes. But not a bad class by any means. Let's take a look at where this class is ranking overall. Number 11 in the 24/7 Sports composite ranking. If you're not familiar, that is the combined ranking of where they stand across ESPN, Rivals, which is still around according to sources, and 24/7 Sports own rankings. So the Wolverines number 11 in the composite, 9 in ESPN, 9 in Rivals, and 12 in 24/7's own rankings. So those are the overall rankings. Certainly a lot of SEC schools ahead of Michigan. In the Big Ten, though, only the Ohio State Buckeyes are ahead of the Wolverines. The Buckeyes now, as of this morning, have jumped LSU, now have the number 3 class in the country. I expect them to get another quarterback commit of a top 100 player here in about an hour and a half from now from C.J. Stroud, the quarterback that visited Michigan a couple weeks ago. So there, potential chance to see, depending on how things go elsewhere, of jumping up to number 2 with Stroud, another 100 player. You never know. Michigan is the number 11 class, right above Penn State at number 12, Nebraska at number 19, and Wisconsin. Just this morning, 3 hours ago, they were outside the top 25. Now they have broken inside the top 25. So a little bit of maneuvering and moving all across the recruiting landscape this morning on National Signing Day. This is the third one of these early national signing periods. The 2018 class in December of 17-19, and now here we are in 2020. But grade Michigan's recruiting class, the 2020 recruiting class, 24 members strong, 13 of those 4 stars. Give me an A, B, C, D, or F. I'm going to go with the solid B myself. Mitchell Rand, see if we can get that in the comments on the page at some point. Grade that in the comments below. Let's get the chat going on this show because compared to some of the other channels here on Chat Sports, this show has lagged when it comes to the live community during these live shows. So give me a grade. A, B, C, D, or F. And before we go through every single recruit in this class, I want to make sure you guys take advantage of these holiday deals for Michigan football. You've watched the show before, you've seen a few of these, but they're still going on. And if you choose that deliver by Christmas Eve option for shipping, you can get them in for Christmas morning for the loved ones or a little self-love on Christmas morning. This Michigan football t-shirt, only $15, chatsports.com/blue3 will take you right there to buy it. How about this Michigan football fleece hoodie and all Michigan football gear up to 50% off. And not the knockoff stuff too, a ton of Nike stuff, a ton of Jordan stuff. Awesome deals going on right now. Don't get left out this holiday season. Go to chatsports.com/blue. Let's get that in the comments section if we can. Live chat here on YouTube, on Chat Sports Michigan Football Facebook page, chatsports.com/blue, up to 50% off your holiday sale. Let's start with the recruiting class right at the top with Mr. A.J. Henning. Producer in my ear just signed his letter of intent as we went live, so no concerns there from Michigan's top overall prospect in the country. He's a game breaker, folks. He's one that you'll see later in the show. We'll talk about the players that'll make an impact in 2020. I kind of compare him to a version of Giles Jackson mixed with Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's incredibly fast, but he's not he's not the biggest guy in the world, but certainly not as tiny maybe as Giles Jackson is. He's a fast player, but I don't necessarily think he's going to be typecast as a guy who's always just getting end arounds and bubble screens and things like that. He can take it to the house deep. He can take the ball from the backfield like you saw in that last play. So I think he is going to be an instant impact player next year. I think he'll be in the top 4 or 5 receivers in the rotation, depending on what Donovan Peoples-Jones and Nico Collins do this offseason. So A.J. Henning, 5'10", 183 pounds. I'm sure by the time the season comes around, he'll be up to about 195. Shorter than your average Michigan football receiver over the years. He ain't your daddy's 6'4" wide receiver from the late 90s, but I think he fits the style that Josh Gattis is going for a lot better than some of the guys this year did. How about Braiden McGregor? One of the funniest / creepiest commitment videos of all time when he committed to Michigan, where Michigan's recruiting coordinator, kind of a weirdo himself, jumped up into his arms and wrapped his legs around a 17-year-old boy. I thought it was weird, but a cool moment for McGregor, the McGregor family, when he committed in Michigan's head coach's office and Jim Harbaugh's offense. He is a kid I think has been one of the top salesmen of this class, the one who's recruiting other players out of the state of Michigan, just outside of the top 100. So not going to give Michigan a bump in that top 100 players that you've got on the list. But I think Braiden McGregor, although I don't believe he's going to make an impact next season, I think 3 years down the line, maybe 2 years down the line, he'll be like an Aiden Hutchinson, Chase Winovich style player where he'll potentially get outside linebacker roles, potentially be on the defensive line, depending on how he fits in the defensive coordinator's defense when he is in Ann Arbor. Next up, Blake Corum. I think Blake Corum has the opportunity to get right into the Michigan, 3 deep next year from the running back position, and he fits what this offense needs that, frankly, Zach Charbonnet and others that they tried to put back there last year, Hassan Haskins and some others, didn't really fit, which is that home run speed. And from watching his recruiting tape, and I've watched a ton of it, it's really exciting. We've got some of it for you right here. I think Blake Corum fits the mold of a Michigan football running back from a home run perspective. Or not the mold, he fits that mold, but Michigan hasn't really had a running back like that, gosh, in maybe 25 years or so. You got to go back to the mid-90s with Tyrone Wheatley, who was more recently known as Michigan's running backs coach a couple years back. And since Michigan's had a player with track speed at the running back position. Now, a little bit undersized, 5'8", 190 pounds, 180 pounds. So there are some size concerns. You see that will be consistently through this class. This is not the same style of recruiting class in a lot of positions that Jim Harbaugh has brought in over his first 4 seasons in Ann Arbor from a recruiting perspective. A lot of buying into the speed and space, especially from these offensive skill position players. Guys, let's get a Go Blue in the comment. Type Go Blue. It's signing day. There's other YouTube channels, Facebook channels out there trying to get your attention for Ohio State and Clemson and Penn State shows their recruiting class. Make sure these recruits, make sure the football team, they know you're supporting them. Give me a Go Blue in the comments. I want to see that you guys are supporting the Michigan football team as we end 2019 and go into the 2020 season. Let's take a next look up at Kalel Mullings. I say Kalel Mullings. Out of the East Coast, a player that Don Brown had his hand in recruiting, and I think Don Brown's presence in the East Coast has really helped Michigan get these players out of places like Massachusetts, out of the East Coast over the last few recruiting cycles, and I think Mullings is one of those. So I missed the ad break. That's what you're saying, Brett. Okay, we missed the ad break. My fault on that. It's in yellow, guys. It was supposed to be a YouTube ad. Got the producer in my ear yelling at me, Yoder, you're fired. So my bad on that one. But Kalel Mullings, a number 158 player overall in the country. He is the number 4 rated recruit in this 2020 recruiting class. How about Jordan Morant out of New Jersey? And Michigan's had a really great showing in the state of New Jersey over the last few recruiting classes. Jim Harbaugh has focused on that state, and it has paid off. Clearly not every player. Kareem Walker and some others have not panned out. Rashawn Gary, first-round draft pick, all Big Ten player. So New Jersey has played very well for Michigan. Jordan Morant, one of the best players in this 2020 class. He is the number 5 ranked player in Michigan football class. So these are the guys we've gone over right here. A.J. Hennings, Braiden McGregor, Blake Corum, Kalel Mullings, and Jordan Morant. But I want to know from you guys, type Y for yes here. Type N for no. Does Michigan recruit well enough to catch Ohio State? Let's talk about this recruiting class in particular. Is this recruiting class good enough to catch Ohio State? Type Y for yes, it is. Type N if no, you see Ohio State's class, and they've got like 8 players right now, I think it is, ranked higher than Michigan's top ranked recruit, A.J. Henning. So I'm going to go with no as of now, but can Ryan Day develop them like Urban Meyer did. I think that's still a wait to see. We probably won't know maybe for 2 more seasons until it's mostly Ryan Day's recruits in there in Columbus. Let's go up to number 6 in this class, R.J. Moten, also out of New Jersey. Number 205 in the country, number 18 safety. And you're going to see a lot of safeties in this top few recruits for Michigan. They over-recruited the position. Some of these guys are much more speed players than Michigan's had at the safety position in the past. You pair a few of these guys with Daxton Hill over the next 3 years. If Hill stays around for a senior year, you might have safeties that can stay toe-to-toe with the Ohio State wide receivers that have been burning Michigan safeties for it seems like a decade plus. So R.J. Moten, top 200-ish player in the country. You're going to see Michigan with 3 safeties in their top 8 or so players in this recruiting class, and it seems like that was a definite focus of the Michigan football coaches for this class, to get more safeties and more speed at the safety position. How about Andre Seldon? Quote tweeted Andre Seldon yesterday, said, "Talk less," because he has been vocal about his future at Michigan and what they're going to do, what they're going to accomplish, and I appreciate that, but with losing 8 straight games, I'm not sure if Michigan wants to recruit. Shane Morris talked a lot. Haven't won a single game since Shane Morris became a Michigan quarterback back about 7 years ago or so. So Andre Seldon, out of the state of Michigan. Some great film on him out there with him going up against Ohio State's recruit Julian Fleming, who is the number 2 player in the entire country. So I like what Andre Seldon brings, but undersized. Another undersized player in this class, but he's out of the state of Michigan, top 250 player. Got some nice film. He makes plays in the ball. He makes it happen fast, undersized though. But you haven't seen Ohio State's receivers win a ton of jump balls against Ohio State. They really haven't had to. Against Michigan, they really haven't had to. What Michigan's secondary has had to do, which they haven't, is beat guys with foot speed down the field. So Andre Seldon brings some opportunities there for Michigan. Makari Paige is the next player on the list, also out of the state of Michigan. He is a top 250 player in the country, another safety out of Bloomfield. 6'3", is that right? That's pretty tall, so not undersized like some of the other folks in this class for Michigan. Top 250 player. I think he's going to see some early playing time. You've got Josh Metellus going on to his next endeavor, whether it's the NFL or not playing football anymore. We'll see what happens with him in the NFL draft. But Michigan's going to be a little thinner at safety. Dax Hill, Brad Hawkins will start next year, but behind that, a lot of question marks. So potentially you could see Makari Paige out of the state of Michigan, top 250 player in the rotation of the 2 deep, at least starting next season. How about the offensive linemen? We finally get some of the big uglies in there. So a lot of skill position players, both on offense and defense at the top of the class. Now you got Zak Zinter, offensive guard out of Massachusetts. Don Brown's ties over there paying off once again. Top 300 player, the number 11 guard in the country is Zak Zinter, and he's the highest graded offensive lineman coming in for the Wolverines in this class. So you see you got R.J. Moten, Andre Seldon, and Makari Paige in the secondary out of the state of Michigan, and then Zak Zinter out of the East Coast. So when I ask you guys this question, I've been following recruiting for about 20 years or so. Who is the most memorable recruit in Michigan history for you? Who is the guy, whether Michigan got him or not, who is the most memorable Michigan recruit that this team has ever got or not got that you have followed? I think in a lot of ways, Ronald Johnson, who didn't go to Michigan, was one for me. I think it was like the 2007 class. Chad Henne in the 2004 class was certainly a big one, given he was a top 5 or 6 player in the country. I also think Ryan Mallett was a very intriguing recruiting battle. And more recently, Jabril Peppers in the 2014 class. So I've got a few there. And I asked you guys, who is the most memorable Michigan football recruit to you? Make sure we tell you guys about these deals. Got some awesome deals going on with you with our merch partner, the Michigan Football Jordan Brand number 4 jersey is on sale right now, guys, for only $75, 25% off. Go to chatsports.com/blue4. Get in your memory, blue 4, the jersey color, the number, chatsports.com/blue4. All kinds of Michigan football gear, including this ladies fleece hoodie, up to 50% off. There's still an opportunity, if you choose the right shipping option, to get these in your mailbox, delivered to your door by Christmas Eve, so you can wrap them up for your loved ones. have a nice Christmas morning with Michigan football. Funny story about gifts. Saw a Christmas present on my tree. It says, to James from Jim Harbaugh. So I'm not sure if Jim Harbaugh actually sent it or not, or if someone's playing a little Santa Claus trick on me, but it does exist. You can check my Twitter account on Christmas morning for photo proof of that. Jaylen Harrell, the most recent commit to Michigan out of Tampa, Florida, Berkeley Prep. They sent a five-star offensive lineman to Ohio State a couple years ago, Nicolas Petit-Frere. Remember that guy? And I thought Michigan had a chance at him. Didn't end up getting him. Apparently, a couple years later, with Michigan practicing in Tampa at a bowl game a couple years ago, doing those recruiting camps, made connections, got a late commit from a top 300-ish player, four-star in Harrell. A nice addition to the class. I don't think a lot of people had expected. So nice addition to the class there with Jaylen Harrell. Next up, Osman Savage. We talked about this here in the office yesterday. With a name like this, Osman Savage, out of Maryland, and the high school he goes to is producing a ton of players, a ton of big-time players, and a lot of them are filtering over to Michigan with the ties of their head coach being a former, admin assistant under Michigan. If Osman Savage does not become a big-time player at Michigan, that is just a waste of an amazing name. So he's an outside linebacker, 2020 recruit, top 300 player, but still a four-star player. Let's go up to our next player on the list, Jeffrey Persi, offensive tackle out of California, just outside the top 300. He is still listed as a four-star player. He's the second to last four-star of Michigan's 13 four-stars we've got on the list. So the second offensive lineman on this list, you've got Persi here, and then, of course, Zak Zinter that we mentioned here just a few minutes ago, number 319 in the country. Last but not least from the four stars is Roman Wilson. Got some awesome footage out there. If you haven't checked it out, go check out Roman Wilson's footage. I don't necessarily think that he is going to be an instant impact player next year. I think he needs to refine some things in the way he runs routes, refine his game a little bit. I think A.J. Henning certainly has the bigger opportunity from the wide receiver perspective, but Michigan's added two speed and space four-star receivers in this class. You see there with Henning, and now here with Roman Wilson. Now, he hasn't signed his letter of intent yet, but we are time zone experts here at Chat Sports, and we can assure you that he has not woken up yet because it's only 5:17 a.m. Hawaii time where Roman Wilson lives. So those are the end of the four stars from Michigan with Roman Wilson. Now let's kind of go off Wilson and go into the 3 stars. So stars are a thing for recruiting. People really care about them. No 5 stars is bad. Bunch of 4 stars good. 3 stars. Now, if you think back to the 2018 class, underrated class. Harbaugh's worst class outside of the 2015 blended class with Brady Hoke. But hasn't it turned out to maybe be his second best class since the 2016 one? You've got Hassan Haskins. You've got Bell. You've got a bunch of different players. What's his name? The linebacker. I'm just forgetting at this point. Cam McGrone. Just like, Yoder, what are you doing here? But that class is turning out to be a lot better than expected. You've got Aiden Hutchinson out of that class. You've got Jalen Mayfield out of that class. That class was the number 22 class in the country, right? So clearly Harbaugh's worst class, and before this year, his only full class that was outside of the top 10. But I think that might end up being his best class behind the 2016 class that produced Devin Bush and Rashawn Gary and a host of other players. 2017 class, number 5 in the country, kind of disappointing. Got a few stars, but a lot of missed opportunities from that class. Let's take a look at Nikhai Hill-Green. Out of the same high school that we talked about for Osman Savage, St. Francis Academy in Maryland, 3-star, number 380 in the country. My eyes are going bad on me. I got screens in front of me, guys, so I'm going to have to squint every once in a while. Exciting player, outside linebacker. I don't think he's going to make an impact next year, but could he be an impact player 2-3 years down the road? I think only time will tell. How about Matthew Hibner? He's out of the state of Virginia, a tight end commit. Some nice film. Just outside the top 400, just outside a 4-star range. He's number 14 tight end in the country. Reminds me of a little bit of a poor man's Jake Butt in a lot of ways. Not taking a slight at him. I don't think he has the athleticism from what I've seen that Jake Butt had at the same age. But he's won 2 years down the line, especially with Mustafa Muhammad transferring out. He could be in the 2 deep by his second year in the program. So that is the number 15 commit on this list. Before we get to the rest of the class, guys, I want to make sure you guys subscribe to the Michigan Football Report. We've got over 100 people watching right now, an unprompted, unannounced show, so appreciate that. We've got daily videos. We've got rumors and news and live chat and Q&A like you guys have now. So you might get hit with an ad break here on YouTube. While you do, just scroll down below the video and hit that subscribe button. Let's take a look at Reece Atteberry. Out of Colorado, Aurora, Colorado, number 435 in the country, a top 10 player, though, at his position. OC, offensive coordinator. For some reason, these recruiting class services still list center as OC, like there's a DC out there as a defensive center. I think that was the case when defensive lines were 6 deep trying to stop the 3-yard cloud of dust. But he's a center. He's not an offensive coordinator candidate or anything like that. But Reece Atteberry, another offensive lineman for Michigan, top 10 in his position. I think he could be in the 2 deep by probably his 3rd year on campus. So take a look at William Mohan out of Brooklyn, New York, Erasmus Hall, number 456 in the country. He's an athlete. I'm guessing he'll end up on the defensive side of the ball. 6'1", 195. It screams big cornerback in this defense, safety. Potentially, if he bulks up, he can move to a Viper position, but I think his position won't be decided until he is on campus there in Ann Arbor. So these are the players we've just gone through. Number 380, number 414, 434, and 455 with William Mohan, the 3-star athlete. How about Cornell Wheeler out of West Bloomfield, Michigan, number 457 in the country, top 20 at his position, inside linebacker at 6'1", 220. Watching his tape, he's fast, but where Michigan's slated, you look at the linebacker depth chart over the next couple of years, what they brought in the 18 class, 19 class, I don't see him making an impact next year, likely redshirt candidate. And maybe again, special teams in the 2 deep, 2.5, 3 deep by his 2nd year. Will compete for a starting job by his 3rd year on campus. Next up, we got Aaron Lewis, defensive end out of New Jersey, number 458 in the country, so still in the top 500, not too bad there. Not a candidate from what I've seen to play next year. Seems a little bit like a depth ad. You've got some bigger fish to fry at that same position in this class. So probably like the 3rd in the pecking order from defensive line perspective or defensive end perspective in this recruiting class. So he'll have perceived talent battles to address once he gets to Ann Arbor. How about Eamonn Dennis, also out of Massachusetts? It's kind of a theme. You've got New Jersey, you've got Massachusetts, very heavily involved in this class. Just as of the top 500, Worcester, Massachusetts, 5'10", 173. I think he also ends up on the defense side of the ball, cornerback, but when I've seen of his film, he could be a guy who matures into a nice kick punt returner, potentially a slot receiver in Josh Gaddis's offense. Kris Jenkins is next up on the list, 6'4", 239, out of Maryland. Another Maryland, New Jersey, Massachusetts. Maryland, New Jersey, Massachusetts. A lot of the East Coast. And I know you guys probably have different thoughts than I do on a lot of this stuff, but I actually am not a huge fan of putting so much of the recruiting emphasis on East Coast. I think Michigan's missing a lot on what's made them great over the last 50 years. They're missing out on Ohio and Pennsylvania. Guys who love the Big Ten rivalries, guys who know about Michigan, Ohio State. So one slight irk that I've had with Jim Harbaugh is not focusing on Ohio State, not focusing on Penn State. You go back to Lloyd Carr, you even go back to Brady Hoke, they really, really took care of business when it came to recruiting those states. So here's the recruiting class: AJ Henning, Braiden McGregor, Blake Corum, Kalel Mullings, and Jordan Morant. Jaylen Harrell, or RJ Moten, Andre Seldon, Makari Paige, and Zak Zinter. Jaylen Harrell, Osman Savage at number 307, Jeffrey Persi, the offensive tackle position, 4-star. Roman Wilson, hasn't signed yet, but he doesn't know why he's still sleeping. Nikhai Hill-Green, Matthew Hibner, the 3-star tight end. Reece Atteberry at center, and William Mohan, the 3-star athlete. Cornell Wheeler, Aaron Lewis, Eamonn Dennis, and Kris Jenkins to round out the players that we have discussed thus far. I got a few more coming up in the class. Micah Mazzccua, I had to look that up and Google it, have Google pronunciation tell me how to pronounce his name. Offensive guard, depth guy, will struggle to he'll have to develop based on the other players Michigan's going to have in front of him and in their perceived recruiting talent. Nick Patterson's an interesting one, right? Because Nick Patterson is Shea's brother, tight end out of San Antonio, where his family is relocated. He hasn't signed his letter of intent yet. And as of, it's 11:24 East Coast time. So keep an eye on Nick Patterson. I believe there's a strong chance he doesn't end up with this recruiting class. Now, I kind of hope he does. It's cool to have the Patterson family. It'd be nice to have Shea show up for a game on campus, whatever it is. But there have been some rumblings that maybe Nick Patterson wasn't right for what Michigan wanted to do on offense. The offer still was extended and was out there, so he gets maybe a little more interest from other schools. I'm not sure, but he's still taking visits. Took a visit as recently as this past weekend to Memphis when I read. And so don't be surprised if Nick Patterson is not a part of this class. Gaige Garcia, though, the last player on the list. Interesting one because he's got some really nice tape at the running back position. Also a very, very high-end wrestler at 5'10", 205. Kind of reminds me of True Wilson, just how he approaches the game. Great blocker, tough to take down, but outside the top 2,000 total players. He's not even the top players at his position out of Pennsylvania. So they get a Pennsylvania recruit. Shout out to Jim Harbaugh for that. But Gaige Garcia, interesting player. May also wrestle at Michigan. Be interesting to see what becomes of his career as a Wolverine, because I think he's the kind of guy that works his butt off from what I can tell, puts his all into everything, but probably is lacking the talent that Michigan's going to have at that same position throughout his time in Ann Arbor. So that's the 24 players of this Michigan football recruiting class. Let's take a look. Let's got a producer in my ear, up-to-the-date rankings, and nothing's changed. Okay, composite the number 11. ESPN's got Michigan's class at number 9, Rivals number 9, and 24/7 Sports, the biased media that's just trying to take Jim Harbaugh down, those crooks over there, rank him at number 12, hurting the entire class. Some breaking news in my ear, though. Here we go. Ohio State, still number 3. Wisconsin has now dropped out of the top 25, giving the Big Ten only 4 teams inside of the top 25 in this recruiting class. So that's a pretty interesting development. They potentially have a chance to jump back in, of course, depending on what happens elsewhere. But nevertheless, only 4 teams in the Big Ten in the top 25 for this recruiting class. I want to make sure you guys take a look at these sale items. The Michigan football shoes, chatsports.com/blue shoes. Normally $130 on sale right now for Christmas, $100. Look, you give this gift to someone in your family for Christmas, you just won the next month, okay? They owe you big time, so don't miss out on those. Also, tons of Michigan football gear, including this women's fleece hoodie on sale up to 50% off. We try and hook you guys up. Make it easy. Chatsports.com/blue is the way to go. We've got a bunch more content coming up for you guys, a bunch more segments here in this show. Don't say segments, Yoder, including your questions coming up in a moment. But I want to ask you before we move on to the live recruiting Q&A, who is Michigan's player of the decade? 2010 through 2019. I put this on Twitter a week ago or so, and it was a pretty strong consensus that it was Denard Robinson or maybe Devin Bush. And I think that's pretty fair to say. I don't know if I have a great argument for anybody else. The only knock on Denard is, the winning aspect of it. Had a 7-6 season his first year starter, 11-2 beat Ohio State, but then a 5-loss season in 2012 where he got hurt and didn't finish the year as the starting quarterback. But answer the question below, who is your Michigan football player of the decade?